So I'm sure I've been looking at your questions and you have a lot of the common questions that we have. This all sounds great, but how are we getting there? And how are we going to get there quickly enough for our children, and how are they going to be able to do this? So some of the biggest focus that you're going to hear a lot about across all content areas, and you've heard quite a bit tonight, deals with the academic rigor. Now, rigor doesn't mean necessarily more. It's more process, deeper thinking, more critical thinking to reach a depth of knowledge. And so as we move forward, we're going to be doing a lot of focus, and your children are going to come home and speak to you at great lengths about this. Probably they're going to be overwhelmed with hearing about the depth of knowledge. But what researchers have found is that when we learn, our goal is to reach a level 4 depth of knowledge. Most of our schools and our assignments and our lessons that our children are used to engaging in are at a depth of knowledge of a level 1 or a level 2. If you look at the chart up there, some of that might be a little small for you, but a level 1 really focuses on recall. And I know, as a parent of 3 children, an elementary, middle, and a high school student here in Pleasanton, you have that homework, let's get it done. They have the test on Friday, they recall the information, they regurgitate it on the paper, and voila, my kid has straight A's. And our kids are very resilient, very bright, and they've learned how to do school. They do it very well. They know the routine, they know how much they need to study in order to be successful at a depth of knowledge of 1. And we've accepted that as being great. And what we found through all this research that Jill spoke of and Dwayne spoke of is that for them to be successful as adults and go to what you were hoping, the skills you hope your children have, to be independent thinkers, self-sufficient, problem solvers, that's not going to cut it at a depth of knowledge 1. We hope that they will become level 3 and level 4 grown adults. That's not to say that level 1's not important. That's that foundation. They have to have that. And then they build upon it. And that's the beauty of the Common Core. So for some of you that are having apprehension and concern, because as you're seeing these videos, you're thinking, what, there is not going to be any rote and repetition, and they're not going to have to recall this? Yes, they're going to have to draw upon that. But you have to have that to move forward. And so as we look further, level 1, we look at that, and that is book dependent. You read it, you memorize it, you move on. Higher thinking, as you move to a level 2, that takes skill and concept. You build upon what you've learned in the book, and then you have to have some skill involved. So many times that takes some book and some brain. As we move forward into level 3, that takes even more critical thinking, because we are moving now from that foundation, we're adding our thinking, and then we're asking them to synthesize, compare, contrast. That is a higher order thinking skill. And then at a level 4, which is the ultimate, they are to combine all of that information and apply it over a long period of time. And so what we're hoping to do is these shifts will allow us to move from the most common level 1 and level 2 and move us to the 3s and the 4s. So how do we get there? I wanted to go to the next one and give you an example. Yes?
Will that replace the Bloom's taxonomy?
It's very complementary to Bloom's taxonomy. And what you will see is that Bloom's really focuses on critical thinking and method of inquiry. And as we go forward with this, you'll see how complementary it is. Whether it's Bloom's taxonomy or Costa's level of inquiry, it's taking those critical thinking components and having our students utilize them. So we will be focusing a lot on the process and application, because ultimately for our students to be successful, that's where success is measured, is are they able to apply it? So when Dwayne was referring to the functions and that sort of stuff, they have to see how it starts, the relationships that they're connected to, so that ultimately they apply that knowledge in solving the bigger problems. It's not, we did that in 6th grade and we never see it again. Ironically, I teach 8th grade English as well as EL and AVID at Hart. We're in the midst of a unit of study on Anne Frank, and we've been doing all this research on the Diary of Anne Frank, the Holocaust, and this afternoon I also teach a collaborative class with a combination of students who are special ed, special day, and with general ed students. And my autistic student today said, "Mrs. Smith, I don't think this is off topic, so I want you to stay with me for a minute." And I said, "Okay, let's go there." And he said, "I watched Survivor last night." And I said, "Me too." And he said, "I don't really watch Survivor, but as I was watching this thing they call Tribal Council, I noticed that it related to Hitler." And I said, "And how so?" And he started drawing comparisons between the 3 members that weren't in an alliance who were being ostracized and they had no power, and the other group that was in a stronger alliance and how they had this perceived power, but they didn't know that this smaller alliance had been working behind their back and had all this immunity. And it was a surprise attack. And he said, "It was so crazy." And then he said, and then the article we read, and you had the quote from President Roosevelt that talked about that in order for us to establish long-term peace, we have to focus on the scientific cultivation of relationships. And I was like, yes! That is level 4 depth of knowledge from an autistic student who is just mainstream for the first time, and he's an 8th grader. So all of our students are capable of this if we provide them with these foundational skills and encourage that exploration. And so ultimately, that's what we're hoping for. And that, as teachers, we're going to try desperately to engage your students in. So what I wanted you to look at here is this is a quick example of depth of knowledge, using the exact same verbiage, meaning describe. Very common. Students are asked to describe things all the time. But as you look at the progression of how it is utilized, focus on what is being asked of the student, the thinking that's being asked of them, and you'll see how the complexity and the level of complexity at which they need to respond increases their depth of thinking and knowledge. So if you look at describe, I'm just going to go sideways here. At a level 1, describe 3 characteristics of metamorphic rock. Pretty low level, pretty basic, they describe. Moving to a level 2, they have to describe the difference between the metamorphic and the igneous rocks. So they need that foundation, and now we're taking it further by having them compare and contrast. Taking it even a step further, describe a model that you might use to represent the relationship that exists within the rock cycle. At each level, we're asking them to describe, but it's getting deeper. And then finally, describe and explain multiple perspectives related to the study of geology and its relevance to the advancement of environmental sciences. So there's your application. So we are in the midst, as a group, trying to utilize what we have in place and push our students to these levels 3s and 4s. Because as we move forward, that is what is being asked of them. And what we found through all these studies is colleges and universities, as well as employers, are saying they can't get to those 3 and 4s, and that's where we need them. Okay. What we don't want is this little slide, is that at the end of all of this, their only skill is knowing how to take a test. Because we focus on that. We focus on it as parents. We focus on it as educators. We want that tangible evidence that we're doing the right thing. And it's very uncomfortable thinking about just focusing on a process. So will your students be assessed? Yes, they will be assessed. And that's what we're going to look at next. Many of your questions that were coming through on the QR were asking about STAR testing, and we'll address that shortly, okay? So how will the testing change? So of course, with new standards, obviously, there's going to be new assessments involved. We, in California, we have decided to adopt the Smarter Balanced Assessment that was created by a consortium. They are managing the assessment for California. We are not the only state that will be utilizing Smarter Balanced. I believe we are one of 44 or 40.
There are 47 states and 2 consortiums, and ours is one.
Okay, so we are using the Smarter Balanced Assessment, which the majority of the states relating into or working with Common Core are utilizing that as well. There's a handout when you leave tonight, if you didn't pick one up, that have website information, links that you can go on the Smarter Balanced website, and you can take a look at what the assessment will look like, okay? They will be focusing on greater depth of knowledge. There will also be a component of a performance task. So as you saw the clip from the math, they were asked to perform a task. That will also be a part of the test. And there will be also a time frame in which we transition from paper and pencil tests like your students are used to this being computer-based testing. So ideally what's going to happen is all students will be taking this assessment on a computer. The unique thing about the test is that it is changed based on students' answers. So as your student starts taking the test and is being assessed on the standards, if your student is achieving and successful at that particular question, the computer will move them to a more challenging or higher level question. If your student is not successful, it will keep them there. And it will continually manipulate based on how the child, the individual child, is doing in those areas. That is completely different than what we've been used to in the past. So that's exciting. What else is different about the assessments is that the students obviously will need some sort of technology and computer skills. They will need, not so much at the middle school and high school level, because most of your children are probably more adept at using a computer than you are. At least in my house, that's how it works. The elementary school children, they need a little more work with their typing skills and that sort of thing. That also presents a challenge for us as a district to equip our sites with the technology needed to have these tests. So when is all this going to take place? Because that's the next big question, and there were, I think, 5 questions we received about STAR. Currently, the state of California takes the STAR test. Many of our students will be taking them in the next 3 weeks or whenever your school has deemed their testing time. We will take STAR this year. Next year, the state superintendent has set a proposal for us to do away with taking STAR in lieu of preparing for Common Core. That decision has not been made yet, okay? Our students will be taking the Smarter Balanced Assessment in the year 2014, 2015, okay? So if you want to fast forward, it's 2 years from now. They will be taking this new form of assessment. So what does that mean? So we have this time to prepare our students to take these tests. There are different test-taking strategies necessary to be successful in these types of tests. Your students are very good at, as I said, doing school. They're also very good at doing tests. They have taken on test-taking strategies to a whole new level. Many of these tests will not be multiple choice, so they can't always pick C, okay? These tests will challenge them to be able to use their higher thinking skills, their critical thinking skills, their literacy skills. And so how we prepare them to take the test is to really enable them to be successful in utilizing critical reading skills, critical thinking skills, and those types of applications. So what I want to do for you, because this all's kind of out there, is I want to show you a few sample questions so you can get a sense of what these new assessments will look like, okay? Now, keep in mind, these are some of the release questions from the Smarter Balance assessments. They are at varying grade levels. So you might be thinking, oh, this is so easy, my kid will do great at this. There's a varied grade level here. So as we look at, this is an English language arts ELA part. I'm just gonna turn sideways here. So as you look, they will read down the left-hand side. So you see how they have to manipulate the computer to be able to do all this. And then what does Naomi learn about grandma? Use details from the text to support your answer and type your answer in the space provided. So it's not, how was grandma feeling? A, she was happy. B, she was. This one, not only do they have to respond, but they have to prove their claim. And that is a phrase you will hear constantly utilized in the classroom. So they will make their claim, and they need to use details, text-based evidence to support. Okay, you wanna look at another one? If you look to the far right, the last paragraph, again, they're reading that same text. Click on two phrases from the paragraph that help you understand the meaning of that. So now they have to go back and highlight. So when Jill was referring to this ability to closely read and critically read documents, you will see now how crucial that will be for them to be able to do. Okay? Again, select 3 sentences that show Naomi is worried when she has done something wrong. This is a higher depth of knowledge. They need to be able to infer. They need to be able to find the textual evidence that proves that. Okay? This is another one. Write an ending for the story by adding details to tell what would happen next. We have never had a standardized test where the children are writing other than the writing proficiencies. It's all primarily multiple choice. So you see how many different levels the student needs to be able to pull from to be successful. They have to be able to write coherently, they have to add details, and they have to connect to something that's already done. Much higher level thinking is needed for them to be successful. Yes?
Well, I get that. Are you incorporating to teach the children how to type if this is going to be time test? Because now you're putting the pressure that you have to make them, they have to think coherently, write it, and then, typing the keyboard is not that easy.
Yes, and to take that into consideration, we were fortunate here in Pleasanton that a few of our schools had the opportunity to pilot. At Hart, we were afforded the opportunity to pilot a an 8th grade math timed test to see how the students would do. And at Moore Elementary, they were able to do a 4th grade or a 3rd grade, I'm not quite sure. And this time, the beauty of us having until 2014, 2015, is this year we've been able to do a needs assessment, not only what we need in the classroom, what we need as professionals, but what our students are going to need to be successful. And so as we have been piloting these and seeing what has been successful and what hasn't, that's enabling us to prepare to see what we need to put in place instructionally to prepare them. That will be a technology component. That will obviously be a literacy component, a written component, a mathematical component. So we're in the process right now of creating that curriculum that we will have 2 years to make. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. And then,
You have another question.
oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, hi.
Are the answers correct by the computer, or is it actually right?
Yes, do you want to speak to that?
So in terms of technology, the Smarter Balance and the others consortiums called PARC, both organizations received about $300 million in federal race to the top money. And a lot of that money has gone towards the artificial intelligence, essentially, and the technology that's been created to score the tests, to read the answers. In terms of our schools being ready for this testing with computer labs, all of our schools are ready. We've done a thorough assessment, but 3 are just barely ready. So we're really cutting it close in terms of being able to be ready for the technology that's going to be required. Yes?
So that was like, how are you going to grade all these? So they're going to be graded?
They're going to be graded by artificial intelligence.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that one, like the one with the splash, I mean, somebody could say a car drove off the road and there was an accident. You can see a child really getting into it.
Yeah.
And then now you're wrong because there was no car in the story.
Right, because if you look at the way the
Oh,
prompt,
okay.
I'm sorry, if you look at the way the prompt is set to the students, they have to include details from the test
That one said what happens next.
based on using 2 pieces, or we can go back and look at that. So I would
We're going to
assume
go what they most likely want you to answer this. We're going to teach those.
you would have to use, much of our instruction will be shifting to having the students find textual evidence that would support their thinking. So it's not to squash their creativity, but it is to say, because in order, in the bigger picture, you can't just make outlandish claims without having evidence to support that. And so obviously this is at a higher age level than, of course, a 2nd grader would take. So that's how our instructional practices will shift in order to help them and prepare them for these types of assessments, which are really more real world than what they're used to. An example of that would be, I have a 3rd grader. She had a math homework, and one of the homework questions was, by knowing what 2 times 7 is, explain how that is related to or helps you know what 4 times 7 is. So she couldn't just write 1428. I know it. That would not be successful. When I proposed that to my 8th graders one day, they were like, because I know that 2 times 7. And I said, but look at what the question is asking you. So that is taking that depth of knowledge, that they have that foundation, level 1, but they have to apply it and use that to explain it. And therefore, our students will have that rich experience of understanding how it applies. It's not just enough to regurgitate the information, because they have to be able to use it in a practical sense, if that's helpful, okay? Okay, so we're gonna go through that. We can pass that. I think they're getting a sense, and I know there's many questions people still have. So what is this gonna look like? What's the implementation? What's our timeline as we move forward? So this year, what Pleasanton has been doing is we have been doing what we were saying, getting a needs assessment, building the infrastructure, focusing on what we do well and how we are going to need to shift ourselves. Next year, focus will be on instructional strategies. We will be focusing on curriculum development. Additionally, we'll be doing mapping. We will also be doing formative assessments. Every school was able to do one in the spring to kind of get a sense of, if our students were to take a test similar to the Smarter Balance test, how would they do? How prepared are they? Where do we need to go? And then ultimately, 2014, 2015, we are looking for full implementation of the standards and assessments and benchmarks and assessments. Ultimately, how does this connect to us in our overall vision and strategic plan? It goes back to what you were hoping your child, the skills they would have once they leave Pleasanton and move on. It goes back to what Jill said and what Dwayne said. It is connecting to us, having our student be resourceful, resilient, independent, responsible, critically thinking, civic citizens. That's really what we want for our kids, productive citizens. That's okay. This is just some of the things you can anticipate. What can you do as we're moving forward? Dwayne, we can go to the next one and I can just help them. What is needed for our students? Because as Jill was referring to, this is a community endeavor. So for a student's perspective, what do they need? Perseverance, you heard that in the videos. Stamina, this is hard work. This is going to challenge them. I know one of the parents was saying, so if my child was a high reader, all of a sudden they're going to be an average reader. No, they're still going to be a strong reader. We're just going to challenge them differently. The expectation is going to be more because they're capable of more. They're capable, like that autistic student in my class. Much deeper thinking than I could have ever thought he was getting. Okay? Collaboration with peers. That is what we need in the workplace. They have to know how to work with one another. And sitting at a table of 4 doesn't mean you're collaborative. It means your teacher sat you at a table of 4 and 3 of them you don't really like. Right? So they need to be trained on what collaboration is, what it looks like, what it sounds like. Being open to multiple solutions. There's not always one right answer. We are going to be living in a lot of gray. And that might be hard for some people to accept. But that's how innovation happens. Thinking out of the box, creating things that come out of the box, but it's based on evidence. And so we're going to be really challenging kids to come up with ideas that is founded in evidence and solid reasoning. So that's not going away, but it's being able to look at multiple perspectives, be critical thinkers. When you're in the workplace and your boss gives you a job to solve that problem, you better figure it out. And there might be multiple solutions to that problem. And determine which is the best solution to the problem. And then the other thing is the literacy that's going to cross all content areas. For those of you, you're all here obviously because you have middle schoolers, it becomes very departmentalized in middle school. I've taught every grade K through 8, so I've kind of seen I've multi-age, all different things. And elementary school, oh, it's all great, we teach everything, and it's all kind of free-flowing. You walk through a middle school door, that's it. I have an expert in science, I have an expert in math, I have an expert in this. And I have kids in my class always saying, why are we learning about history? This is English. No, it's literacy. So you will see that throughout all content areas, and it's such a great thing that it's become even more collaborative on a professional level. Working with the science departments, it's now becoming a more collaborative effort. So we're modeling that process also for our students, so that's valuable. Okay, so for teachers, what are we gonna need? We're obviously gonna need some professional development because things are changing, and that's a good thing, okay? Collaboration that I spoke to, and a lot of reflection. It's holding up that mirror because like Dwayne said, we here in Pleasanton are very fortunate. Our students do well. So it's easy to pat ourselves on the back. But there's no reason why they can't be doing better. And so it's time to hold up the mirror and see how we can challenge them to become better. For you, what can you do in this partnership? These are just some suggestions. Encourage your child to persevere. I know it's easy, especially late at night, and you've worked all day, and then you've got to cook, and they've got homework, and they're asking you, just like, it's 28, just write it down. Right? I'm there, believe me. Even I know as soon as I get home, because for some reason, Dad can't help with homework in their mind. Only Mom can help. And you get to that point. So we all have to, as painful as it is, or Dwayne says, sit there, as the one word takes 5 seconds to read, and you want to hustle them through it. They need to see that this is hard work, and nothing comes easy without it. So that skill of stamina, building stamina, persevering is going to be a key component. Promote the process, and that's really hard. because we have so much going on, we just want to get to the end result. But it's really them learning the process. Those are the skills that they're going to use. Okay? Talk conversations, talk about things that are happening around them, and more open-ended questions. How was your day? Fine. Okay, we're moving on. You know, what was your favorite thing about today? What was the worst thing that happened today? More open-ended to promote that conversation and that discussion. And that's going to help them as well. And technology is going to be huge. So if you can, like you said, how are they going to get better at typing? How are they going to get better at doing this? You know, they figure that stuff out. It is amazing. I always tease some of my kids when they're like, I couldn't write that paragraph last night. I'm like, really? Well, you managed to get to level 29 in Call of Duty. You figured out how to go there. So you have that ability, right? They're capable of more than they're allowing themselves to be capable of. So we need to encourage that. And writing, anytime you can encourage any type of writing would be fabulous. Okay? And so this is what we're hoping for. We're going to stay true to our timeline with fidelity. We are going to be working together collaboratively, and hopefully, I'm hopeful, this is going to be a great change for us. Okay? So with that said, that is on the handouts. There are multiple resources for you. Go ahead.
So there are a couple things on the back table that if you didn't get, I want you to get. This document, which is stapled, has a very clear outline. These are samples, very clear outline for 6th and 8th grade, all of the English language arts pieces, and then there's a sample for you, an overview of the math standards for 7th grade. The other document, so I'm thinking, what are 3 things? Now, you're all feverishly taking notes, but 3 things to think about as you walk away tonight. One is to Google SBAC, that's Smarter Balance Assessment Consortium, so you can get a better idea of some of the test questions. You can actually even practice some right there, but you really get a sense of the test questions, and that link is here. Also, the California Department of Education, cde.ca.gov, or just Google California Department of Education. When you go there, you'll see Tom Torlexon's picture on the upper right-hand corner. There's a search feature. Just put in Common Core State Standards. There's so many resources there, you can't even get through all of them. There's a whole section for parents and teachers and everything. Yeah.
Can we answer some questions?
Yes, absolutely.
So we've gotten some of your questions here. We'll address some of those first, and then if you have others you want to ask us, we'll be happy to answer them for you as best we can.
I want to thank you for your willing participation to try our little experiment. It's really kind of exciting. As we're talking, all of your little questions are like bing, popping up. It's kind of cool. All right, so we have a series of STAR questions. STAR testing is going to be maintained. The answer is no. It's going away. It's being replaced by Smarter Balanced. What will be the use of technology and social media in the classroom? Twitter, Facebook, etc. Common Core doesn't say a whole heck of a lot about that. Our district does have our personal desire to be producing or providing a 21st century education. Nothing specifically is mentioned about Twitter and Facebook, and I imagine any administrator would absolutely cringe to hear those things being used. But our district does have a mandate to provide a 21st century education. Will this presentation be available at the PUSD site? And well, we are videotaping it, so I imagine it will be available somewhere and probably on the PUSD site, so give us some time before that starts showing up. I will be the point person. I don't mind being the point person. So if you're looking around and you can't find the video, email Dwayne Habecker. My email address is jgolden@pleasantonusd.net. Okay, and I'll be happy to respond. Okay, are students going to be tested on these new standards? Yes, in 2014, 2015. how can you teach thinking skills? I don't know. If you can figure it out, let me know, because we're looking for good suggestions. No, on a serious note, man, the entire curriculum, everything about Common Core is about developing thinking skills. Everything. Pretty much the best way to teach thinking skills is to provide them opportunities to think. And the old standards in general did not do that. The new Common Core standards will. Now there's some math specific, and then I'm going to hand it off to you guys because there's some literacy questions. This one says, Suzanne, you rock.
Thanks.
Hello. Yeah, that's true. Okay, no, this one, okay. Are all the schools and states implementing the Common Core standards at the same time? The answer is no. However, all states do know that the testing begins 2014, 2015. New York, Kentucky, a lot of the eastern states have been doing this for several years now, maybe 2 or 3 years now. Our district is starting now. I just met a first-year math teacher at Milpitas last night at a panel discussion I was on, who is excited because they are going to begin Common Core next year. So it is not happening at the same time. Although we are testing, we all have the exact same finish line, 2014, 2015. This must be our question.
Is there a state that's been successful at it?
Yeah.
Kentucky, New York, they've been using it. Yeah. Because I hear that people from New York don't know how to read and how to write. They're implementing so they're a successful model with that already.
I'm pretty excited about what I see coming out of New York. I'm very excited. As I read the Common Core standards, and then now the standards do not equal curriculum. Standards are merely the list of things that we need to accomplish. Curriculum is the pathway for how we accomplish that. And I'm very excited about how New York is interpreting the standards by providing curriculum for their teachers, which they're years ahead of us. Well, they got the capacity for it, so it's okay. I'm very excited about that. They're pretty darn excited. Kentucky, we had some kind of disappointing news come out of Kentucky. Kentucky is one of the first states in the nation to provide statewide assessment built entirely on Common Core standards. It's kind of a bummer for them because the scores got lower. No duh. It's more rigorous. It's better. It's going to take a while. Now that leads me directly into this next question. I think this is really important as middle schoolers. Middle school is when we get our kids on a path to go to college. All right, and this question, rats, I lost it. It's about the colleges. What number is that on? Oh, there it is. What will the impact of these new standards on college application and selection, in parentheses, how colleges will select students? Super duper important, right? Why should we implement something on students that's going to damage their ability to go to Stanford? The good thing is, the organization, the College Board, the people that run SATs, the other organization that runs ACT, and their name is escaping me, both of those organizations were essential in creating the Common Core standards. They are doing this, they are creating the standards, they are involved in creating the standards specifically because they know it's going to make our kids more college ready. Right now, it's characterized as when students leave high school, our students are college qualified, not college ready. So the SAT people, the ACT people would like to fix that. And so they are absolutely on board. In fact, they were very willing participants in the creating of the Common Core standards.
Dwayne, I want to add, I mean, I was thinking as well, everybody's
Here, talk.
relative. You know, everybody's going to be in the same position because you look at competition getting into colleges. So we're all pretty much going to be on the same page coming from different areas. So I think they will look at that as well.
And ideally, the other beauty is that, as was kind of implied by some of the comments before, that, well, we're in California and our standards are higher than, say, Mississippi. Nothing against Mississippi, and I don't know if that's true, but I'm just hypothetical. You know, if you graduate from Amador or Foothill High School compared to some other one, it's understood, we have these reputations, so on and so forth. when this Common Core and the consortium of professionals and colleges and everybody came together, they wanted to make things common so that it was easier for them to compare students nationally, so that you didn't have that, oh, well, they went there and they went here. Also, when students move from state to state, they don't have to catch up or be held back because they haven't covered that, or we haven't covered this, or we don't have that in our state. So this is actually going to make the playing field more level. Will this be attached to their college application? There has been discussion way down the road that this would be another component. For our students, your age students, I have not seen anything come down that will be on their application. However, if you have younger children, potentially it could. And one of the other questions I saw was, well, then if I have a first and second grader, how are they going to catch up and be able to perform well on these tests? I think with what we're saying is that not to hang a black cloud out there, but it would be reasonable to assume that test scores will dip. It is going to be relative because it's new for everyone to be doing this. We are assessing them differently. So, and they might surprise us, who knows? They might be off the charts. There's no way of determining that. When we did do our little pilot tests, the students, we surveyed our students afterwards and asked them, what did you think? What skills do you think you need to be successful? And across the board, they said, I need to be a good reader. I need to be a good writer. Time management. They recognize this, and these are 11, 12, and 13-year-olds recognizing the skills that they're going to need to be enhanced. So with that being said, if anything, this is going to prepare them more, and this came out of the fact that we had students that, as he said, were college qualified or college eligible, but needing 40% of them needing to take math remediation and English remediation courses because they couldn't pass the placement test, and they were graduating with 4.0s from fantastic high schools. So there's a need for this.
Just a quick question. How does Common Core address intervention? For example, how are teachers going to create homogeneous groups in the classrooms or in the learning groups?
No, it doesn't specifically address interventions. I mean, that's more of something that you decide at the local level. They can't possibly know who the specific students are that are sitting in front of a teacher. So that's another aspect of professional development and focus we have to have. The standards say the what, and we have the curriculum, which is evolving, and the testing. But then in addition to that, teachers have to have a whole huge toolkit of strategies that they know how to use to work with students way at the top, students in the middle, and students who are struggling.
I'll answer a quick question, then I'll call on you. Is that okay? This one's been waiting for a little while. This is a specific question for math. Will you keep the progression Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2? That's the traditional progression we've had since the 1950s. And, or will the labels change? And in Pleasanton Unified School District, the Common Core standards have provided for 2 pathways. So I want to say that. So you may hear Common Core where there's 2 pathways in math. One's called integrated, essentially let's call it Math 1, Math 2, Math 3, Math 4, where they take all of the math and jumble it together and teach it in an integrated fashion from year to year in high school. Then there's the traditional, that's what most of us have experienced. You have a year of pure algebra, a year of pure geometry, and a year of pure algebra 2. Common Core has allowed for both of those pathways. So every state, every district gets to choose. Our district has chosen to stick with the traditional Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2. It's going to be comfortable for most parents. However, I want you to know that if you hear other things from other districts, that's allowed. because Common Core has made room for both pathways. You had a question now.
So, coming from the corporate world, I agree. The curriculum or the core standards that you're describing are very relevant. And I think you're also very fortunate because in Pleasanton, the demographics are most parents have college educations, so you guys have an advantage. So what I am concerned about, and seeing this implemented in the corporate world where you have 6 to 8 people in a room, is the facilitation of those kind of conversations is more of an art than a science. So my concern becomes around teacher readiness. As things exist now, my son's a 7th grader, I can't even get 2 teachers to have the same web page and to post the date of the homework, whether it be the day it's due or the day it's assigned. So I have to navigate all that. And I know you guys have my student, you do a wonderful job, and we certainly appreciate Pleasanton, but you have my child for 41 minutes. I'm the night shift and the weekend shift. So what I don't see is a parent readiness for the change. And so what I see is a 28 student classroom that's now very collaborative, assessing more frequently than one end of the year test. And I'm afraid that my student's going to be caught in a 2-year, we weren't really ready, so these were the kids that fell through the crack. So how would you address that? And how does the teachers union address some of the requirements?
So I think one of the things
Was that a lot of questions?
Notice we're not running to the microphone.
we're all like, okay, who wants that
My child is in the top.
Sorry, I'm busy right now. I'm
one? So there's good news for you. And so, okay. Also, when Smarter Balance happens, how do I say this? There are only certain grade levels that will be taking the Smarter Balance assessment, okay? In high school, they will only take it one time, and it's their 11th grade year. So if you have a 7th grader, let's walk us through it. Next year, potentially, it's star or no star. We're waiting on an answer from the state, okay? The following year, your student will be a 9th grader. He or she will not be taking it because he will not or she will not take it until their 11th grade year. So with that being said, your student will have 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, 3 years, theoretically, of this strategized direct instruction to help create these skills and develop and enhance these skills so that they're able to be successful in that type of assessment. Not to say they're not going to be having formative assessments as they go through it. Does that kind of address part of what you were asking?
Not really.
Okay. No, there was a lot in there, so I'm trying to pinpoint what you were asking.
So the first part is, let's just look at day to day.
Okay.
41 minutes every class. What, 41?
46.
46, all right.
Yeah.
But
A
really,
couple to sit
40.
down, a couple to stand up and get ready to leave.
Right.
But basically 41 minutes.
Sure.
How do you take 28 students and really facilitate that level of 3 and 4 discussion and critical thinking and have it productive, and it doesn't come home to me at night to finish up?
Okay, I see what you're saying. So I hope I wasn't misleading when we talked about depth of knowledge. We will not be level 3, level 4 all day, every day. That's not going to happen.
It really should be. That's real world.
Not really, because you have to hone those 1s and 2s to enable you to be at a 3 or a 4, right? So we can't hit them at a 3 and expect them to be successful there right off the bat. So it will be an artful process of working and facilitating that development within your classroom. What will be really nice is that we are receiving a lot of professional development. We are seeing what is working.
Okay, and so when is that development happening?
It's in place right now. We have started. We have had cohorts for the last 18 months. Teacher leaders have been trained who have then gone back to their sites and they have been implementing it. Currently, the district is in the position of looking for instructional coaches whose jobs will be to help guide, support, mentor, develop the practice, developing curriculum. So all of this is a process that has been in place for the last 18 months. It's been in development. So maybe as a parent, you're not seeing it right now. It is slowly being infiltrated, for lack of a better word, into the classrooms right now. Many school sites have taken on GLAD strategy trainings. There's a lot of implementation that takes time because, again, this is a process, and I know we're in a situation where we're very product oriented and we tend to get impatient, so it will take some time, but that's why the district has that timeline of implementation. So you are slowly going to be seeing things. Students might be coming home and speaking a little differently. I know kids in my class, they're like, oh, textual evidence, here we go again. It's that whole shift, paradigm shift in their thinking and the approach. So it's a slower process. So maybe you're not seeing it in the form of, and you're seeing more traditional stuff that's coming home, and more of that process is being happening in the classroom. Maybe you guys can add to that.
I was going to add to what Suzanne was saying, is that it is a process. And for example, if we're building upon units of study we've already done, we're adding more depth to them. So it is a process, and I think you are, Suzanne was right, I mean, you're going to hear a difference in academic language because the students are all using the same language that we're using this year as like evidence, justification, perseverance, you know, things like that. So it is a process, but we're on the right track. The kids are, without them knowing, they're falling into the same track that we want them to be.
So how does the teacher get measured? Does somebody actually sit in the class once a year, or is there a metric or a rating, or how do we know that the teachers are actually implementing what they were?
So we have an evaluation system, a district adopted, agreed to with the union. We sit down at the table with Pleasanton Teachers Association and make agreements about what the evaluation process is going to be. We use the California Standards for the Teaching Profession as the guide for that evaluation system. Every single teacher in the district is in some sort of a schedule. Our temporary teachers and probationary teachers are evaluated every year. Tenured teachers are about every 5 years.
So once a year is the assessment, and then tenured teachers are once every 5?
Yeah, but I'm not sure where you're going with the questions.
No, I'm just trying to understand, when you're implementing the process, how do we know as a parent that everything's like going as planned in the classroom? Because remember, our kids, when you say, how was your day, they're like, fine. Yeah, and it's
well,
like,
you know, this is a large-scale change. I mean, this is big, large-scale change. It's kind of that depth of knowledge 4 level of change. Do we know exactly what it's going to look like? No, we don't. Will our principals and teachers communicate with you on a regular basis about how we're doing and what's happening? Absolutely. Other questions that you have?
I think that was just the main one. I don't know if anyone else has that same concern, but I mean, I'm for change. I know change is not perfect day one, but I look at the program and I like the program. I just want to make sure we have our best chance out of the gates. And then also, are we ready on, you know, to use another corporate term, our day one, which would be August 26th?
So we're working on it. You know, our teachers pretty well understand the timeline that we're on. We're committed resources throughout the district. I mean, this is a major, major effort for us. And from the superintendent and the board on down, we are working as hard as we can. If you look at the 18 school districts in Alameda County, you'll find that we're the farthest along. There are actually school districts in the county
I'm
that.
coming from Castro Valley, and I do want to vouch for that. It's risky to talk about this almost a year and a half before it comes into place, because clearly you don't have all the answers. Some, they're not there yet. But in Castro Valley, they're not talking about it yet. So this thing you're saying, the teachers will stay in touch, the principals will stay in touch, you're doing it right now.
Right, we are, just by the fact of having the forums, having 3 special board meetings this year to talk about the work. We'll continue to update you on websites and really try to get the information out. And obviously, if you have specific questions, to talk with your school administrator and teachers, yes.
Okay, so I'm assuming that there's going to be all new textbooks?
So the textbook process is going to take a while. Right now, and I'm going to take this as the last question, because my teachers have been up since early this morning, as have my administrators. Right now, the publishers write textbooks specific for California. We are the largest consumer of textbooks in the country, and Texas is number 2. What the Common Core is going to allow publishers to do is what's called economy of scale. So rather than writing a textbook for California and a textbook for Texas and a textbook for these states, they're going to be able to develop textbooks that everyone is going to be able to use. That's going to take a while. Right now we're starting the process. We're looking at the elementary level for Common Core aligned math materials, but we need to wait until the publishers have developed their Common Core aligned materials before we start purchasing. I'll admit that we're behind. Our reading program in our elementary classrooms is 13 years old. So we need to get going. We also have not had money. The district is looking at committing as much as $10 million in the next 4 years for new textbooks.
Well, that was my next question. I mean, this is huge, obviously. And all I ever hear is we don't have any funding. Now all of a sudden we have funding to do all of this.
Well,
is anything going to hurt from all this money being funded into?
We may have to look at some other cuts, but please keep in mind that the voters in California passed Prop 30. And Prop 30 over the next several years is going to bring school districts a great deal more money. I mean, this is my 33rd year in public education in the East Bay. I've worked in 2 school districts. And what we've just been through is horrible, and I believe we've reached the bottom and we're now on our way back up.
Do you think class sizes will ever go back?
Yes, I do. I do. In probably the next 2 to 3 years, you're going to start to see class sizes go down. And interestingly enough, the state is looking at, for high school class size reduction, not doing it in 9th grade math and language arts, but doing it in our career and technical education programs. I'm going to have that be the last question. Thank you so much for coming tonight. Really appreciate you being here and your interest and support.